awesome, Colin. That is great, man. I'm so excited about today. Going down, everybody, thank you on this audience that is visiting Fed Supernova and watching this great track on autonomy, robotics, and drones. We really have a great opportunity for you to hear what's going on in government, what's going on in industry. And what I'd like to do now is bring Army Applications Laboratory, a great partner of Capital Factories, and obviously, one of our major defense partners who's very interested in autonomy and robotics, and very eager to bend Army to the small business needs that we have across our community. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Claire and Casey of Army Applications Lab. And if they're ready, we can get this party started. This is going to be really exciting to listen to what they have in store for our entrepreneurs, our startups, and non-traditionals across the emergent industry sector. So Claire, I see you're online. Happy to see you.
Hey there, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to see that your mic and your speakers are working.
Woo, we did it.
Celebrate. We got a big win. That's a big win. And I see Casey, she's online too. Awesome. How are you doing, Casey?
It's good. It's good to see you. Thanks so much for having us here.
I know, it's going to be so awesome, so great. I'm so glad that you guys, Army Applications Lab and both of you ladies want to come and share how Army is going to bend a business. I know that you came here a couple years ago. Everybody's excited to work with Army. You guys are doing some great work. And I just want to know and find out myself, plus the people here in the audience, how can they better connect, and how is Army bending to bring those opportunities to our emergent business sectors to really bring great things to our economy and to the soldiers. So over to you.
Absolutely. So we're very excited to be here today. Thank you for everybody that is tuning in. As was mentioned, my name is Dr. Casey Perley. I'm the Director of Insights and Analysis at the Army Applications Lab, which we affectionately call AAL. I love saying I have the best job in the lab because it means I get to work with all of our subject matter experts, be they the scientists and engineers or our commercial experts like Claire.
Hey y'all, my name is Claire Hansen. I am a member of the corporate ventures team at AAL. I'm only 6 months in, and that's 6 months into Army period and government period as well. So still things feel very new for me. Prior to AAL, I worked in the commercial sector with early stage investors, primarily focused on pre-seed, seed, and Series A investments. So of course, through that work, I also worked closely with the startups that they were interested in investing in. Echoing Casey, we're super happy to be here and happy to tell you more about what we've been up to. Before we dive in, I do want to give you a heads up that we're hoping to leave a couple minutes at the end of the session for some questions. We'll probably only be able to get through like 2 or 3 questions, but please do submit them on Hopin. And if we don't get to them in this session, we have another opportunity outside of this conference where we'll be happy to answer your questions, and we'll touch on that at the end. So again, please submit your questions. We hope to get to a couple of them. And with that, I will let Casey kick it off with an overview of AAL.
Fantastic. So for those of you who've never heard of Army Applications Lab or AAL, I want to give you a brief overview of who and what we are. So our mission at AAL is to discover, evaluate, and transition dual-use technology into the Army, and to reshape the way that the Army does business. I mean, it's no secret that working with the DoD has a reputation for being challenging. And if there is that reputation, then how are we going to find the best and most innovative companies and utilize their technology to help our soldiers, right? In order to do that, we really needed to sit down and think and figure out how we could break down these barriers to entry that a lot of non-traditional companies face, and figure out how we can make the Army a better business partner so people want to come work with us.
Yeah, that's right. So we're talking about bending the Army toward business, or how AAL is lowering the barriers of entry to working with the Army, making the Army a more desirable business partner, and especially in the context of companies who wouldn't traditionally think about working with the Army. You might have noticed that AAL hasn't made a lot of public appearances since we launched about 2 years ago. And that's really because we've been kind of heads down trying to prove out our approach and prove that our approach can work. So we've been building that track record and Today, we want this session to serve as more of like an update on what we have been able to accomplish so far. And also talk to you, as Jorge alluded to, talk about how the Army is starting to adopt commercial practices that are hopefully making it easier for us to interface with industry and vice versa. So as we undertook this endeavor to help the Army become a better business partner, we started with some research, as all scientists do. We knew that working with the Army was known to be painful, but we didn't know exactly what that meant. We wanted to find out from kind of the horse's mouth what the exact issues were. So we went out and talked to investors, entrepreneurs, academics, all the people we were hoping to engage. We went out and found them and got their take on what the pros and cons were to potentially working with the government. And out of all of the concerns and complaints that we received, there were a lot, we distilled that feedback into 3 key themes. Those were access, transparency, and capital. So we're going to frame this conversation around those concepts and talk about what we've accomplished so far in tackling those specific issues. So without further ado, please go ahead and share my slide and I will dive in. So that first main pain point we're going to talk about is access. This is a pain point we identified for startups or even partners that are considering working with the Army as a new market. You know, there's no 1-800 number to call to figure out where to start. When you know, if you're new to working with the Army, you just look at us as like a big behemoth with lots of red tape. You don't know how to get in contact with anyone. Army leaders aren't on LinkedIn or on some of the traditional channels that startups would normally use to reach out. So we bridge that gap by giving companies access to decision makers and end users. I don't think I really need to explain how important that is for startups. I mean, it's absolutely crucial, right? That you have access to the customer, makes sense, access to the end user so that you can really develop solutions that are relevant and that work in situ or like in the context, right? So that's one barrier we've broken down. If accepted into one of AAL's programs, companies are given access to, and their work is overseen by Army leaders from day one. So that includes the potential Army customer, the soldiers themselves who will hopefully be using your solution one day, doctrine writers and subject matter experts. I mean, anyone that needs to know about your project will know about it. And we put those people in field with the entrepreneurs to experience the problems firsthand and explain what's going on in the field.
So a really great example of this is our Fire Faster cohort, which is going on right now. So the problem those companies are trying to solve is how do you get artillery, field artillery, to fire faster? And in that case, the cross-functional team, so that's the people in the Army who are in charge of modernizing, and the PM, who are the people that actually buy the project, they're in it from day one. They help down select the companies who applied. They've taken round tables with them to give them information. They've gone to the field with them at Fort Hood to watch artillery fire live. And actually outbriefs are going on right now. So those 15 companies are briefing the critical Army decision makers on their work and their path forward. We're really looking forward to putting some companies on prototyping contracts pretty soon. And we can't wait to share with you the results of that in the coming weeks.
All right, so now that we've kind of talked about access and explained, you know, what we're doing to tackle that issue, the second major pain point that we identified in our research was transparency. So I liken this to the feeling of submitting a government form. So whether it's in person, like at the DMV, or maybe it's online if you're lucky, or maybe it's by mail, you're wondering, you know, where exactly is this form going? And is it going to make it to the person who actually needs to see it? How long is it going to take to hear back? Those sorts of questions are the same questions we realized companies and partners kind of had when approaching the Army to work with the Army. And that's obviously a terrible experience. So that's a barrier that we at AAL have really focused on breaking down. And to do that, we've taken a two-pronged approach to provide more transparency. First of all, we have a corporate ventures team, which is the team that I'm on. We're a team made up of investors, entrepreneurs, and kind of innovation business people. So we've lived in this world for quite some time and are, you know, used to interacting with startups, investors, commercial partners in ways that the Army traditionally doesn't. So our job is really to meet entrepreneurs where they're at. And in formats they're familiar with and language they're familiar with. We hold events. Of course, right now they're virtual, but we hold events like office hours or Ask Me Anything sessions, AMAs. So things that a lot of startups are already familiar with. We're there providing that value in a way that's familiar to them. We'll also, hop on the phone with a company or, send them an email. No acronyms required. So language that's conversational, friendly, and really helps translate the Army's needs into language that they're used to. And then, of course, we can take that information back and translate it back into Army speak for our internal stakeholders. So we're really here to cement those lasting relationships and act as a consistent point of contact for companies that they're comfortable approaching, not only for the companies that we hope to work with, but also for potential channel partners. So we kind of have a similar approach with the VCs, accelerators, and other innovation hubs that we hope to work with. So that's kind of, like I said, that's one part of the two-pronged approach to transparency. The second is that when we come up with a project or we present a project, we don't present the project in terms of requirements. We communicate the problem and then ask for solutions. So this takes a little bit of vulnerability. The Army isn't really always comfortable, talking about their problems and wearing their heart on their sleeve. As I'm sure many of you in the audience know, when the Army is typically seeking a solution, we, as in the Army, do the ideating. We observe the problem and we come up with a list of requirements for a bespoke solution that we've imagined in our minds. And really, in order to fulfill those requirements, you have to be a large company with the scale and resources to fulfill each of those requirements. So when in working with startups, that doesn't really work. We have to flip that idea on its head, and that's what we've been doing. We collaborate with industry, so with the entrepreneurs, the technologists, and the subject matter experts. We give them that access that we talked about. And then the second part of that is we have to be transparent about the actual problem. We have to kind of let them in. So we, instead of communicating requirements, will present the problem and ask industry, ask the companies for solutions, not the other way around.
So one of my favorite stories about this is one of the first problems that AAL worked on was an autonomous resupply problem. And I'll be honest, while we put out this really blue sky problem approach, I think like in our hearts, we kind of were like, we're going to get like autonomous ground vehicles, maybe some robotic arms. Like we know what we're going to get. We know what the solution is. And we took 6 companies out to Fort Sill, once again, watching field artillery fire live, watching them resupply. It was raining, and you had these soldiers that were filling out inventory forms on paper that was just, disintegrating in the weather. And there was this company that it's like, we can automate that too. And it was this incredible eye-opening moment because it was a problem the Army didn't realize it had. Because to us, a soldier filling out forms in the rain seemed absolutely normal. And that's really the benefit of this problem-focused, not requirement-driven, jargon-free approach, is it gave them the ability to give us a solution we didn't even know we needed. And for that company, they're now on their second Army contract. Their business has expanded since working with the DoD, and we're really excited to see what they and all of our autonomous resupply companies produce in the coming months.
That's super exciting. I just want to continue with capital. This is so exciting, ladies. I mean, just keep going. We got about 5 minutes left. Just wanted to let you guys know, but let's keep going. This is great. And hopefully we'll get a couple questions in right before the end. Over.
Sure. Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah. So our third main point, Jorge, thanks for introducing it, is capital, right? Speed and access to Army capital has always been, somewhat of a black box. We don't have to say too much about it. We all kind of know that the DoD is not good at getting companies on contract quickly or really understanding or truly appreciating the relationship between time, capital, and what is truly required of startups to innovate. Another piece of that contracting pain point is what is, commonly known as the Valley of Death. The Valley of Death is a term that has been assigned to this pattern of R&D projects, falling to the wayside instead of turning into lasting, meaningful business contracts. So I'm not going to say much more, just that we know those are the pain points and we're working to fix them.
So as Claire mentioned at the beginning, this is a bit of an update. So what has AAL done in terms of capital and addressing these pain points? In the about 2 years since we launched, we've given out $22.9 million worth of contracts to 44 companies. 54% of those have never worked or have very limited experience with the DoD. In addition, we're working to improve the speed of contracting. And for our Fire Faster cohort, companies were on contract about 90% faster than with similar programs. And they found out only 7 days after submissions closed if they'd been accepted or not. And lastly, we don't want our technology to sit on the shelf. 2/3 of our completed projects are in the hands of soldiers. They're being used right now. For companies whose projects are still ongoing, about 75% of those come in on what we call a prototyping contract. It's a small dollar value contract, and about 1/3 of those have gone on to prototype and to make their product. And in addition, for our companies that come in on those higher dollar value, prototype typing contracts, over 3/4 have unlocked the second gate on that contract or gotten a second contract. So we're really trying to drive these projects forward, get technology in the hands of soldiers.
That's awesome. Well, we have about a minute left. So I wanted to see, if you want to just talk about engaging with AAL really quick, and maybe we might be able to squeeze in a question, but we've got about 1 minute left before we start our next track. But go ahead, ladies. This is extremely exciting. And,
sure.
Please, let's see how we can engage with AAL.
Yeah, I'll point out just a couple things on this slide. The first is to just follow us. LinkedIn is a great place to follow us. That's the best social channel to follow us on. So go ahead and give us a follow there. I also wanted to point out that we have an upcoming Ask Me Anything session on the 17th. You can find that listed on Eventbrite. So if we don't get to your question today, which it sounds like we might not, please join us then, and we'll be announcing more dates for future AMAs soon as well. And then lastly, Casey will be back at 1 o'clock to dive into the current opportunities we have available. So I'll just point out those 3 items really quickly and turn it over either Jorge or Casey to start answering questions.
Sure. We probably have time for just one quick question.
Sure.
The question we have is from Brian Cook. He says, access is a huge challenge, even if you've worked with AFC in the past. When will AAL scale access to something larger than a few use cases to synchronizing across the 31+4?
So that's a great question, right? AAL is a very problem-focused organization. So right now, we're really focused on giving access to the companies that are trying to solve the problems we're working on. But as we mentioned in the beginning, AAL wants to fundamentally change the way the Army does business. We're already seeing organizations across the DoD adopt maybe a more problem-centric approach, really prioritize contracting speeds and the like when working with certain types of companies. So it's certainly something we hope to expand and we want to expand, and we want to do that by driving cultural change within the Army.
That's awesome. Well, unfortunately, that's about all the time we have. But for the audience out there, you guys, ladies, you did great. And we're so excited about AAL and how they're bending Army to business. This is so exciting to us. So please, those links that you saw on there, feel free to reach out to AAL. Or if you're here in town in Austin, Texas, come up to the 8th floor. AAL's got a great space there where we can collaborate with them. And hey, if anything, just reach out to me, Jorge Manresa, VP for Federal Defense, and I'll make sure to connect you to these lovely ladies doing great work for the U.S. Army, and many, many others there at AAL. So thank you, everybody. I do appreciate your time, and so super excited to continue working with you guys. Looking forward to the future. Talk to you all later.
Thank you so much for having us.
All righty. Bye-bye.